So we're back and now with a second session of the Luso-American Education Foundation, the conference on education and culture. This is our 48th conference. We have our next presenter, which will be here shortly, is already actually joining us, and is coming to us from the beautiful island of Santa Maria in the archipelago of the Azores. As we continue, we have three different presentations today. So we had Yulinda. We will have in a few moments António Sousa Monteiro. And then at 11 o'clock, we will have José Andrade. And at 12, that panel with Luso America folks who are either in different committees or different officers to have a reflection of about 30 minutes about the foundation. So there he is, António. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Denise. I'm okay and kind of seeing how it's gonna work now, speaking in English and in this full session. But I think you'll help me. The session, the panelists will all help me to for us to talk a little bit about what's been happening in the Azores and Santa Maria regarding the Atlantic and the diaspora.
Indeed.
Thank you for having me and for inviting the LPAZ Association and thank you for all this work. I'm just amazed about this previous session that we had about the women writers. And again, on the light, below the light of this last matters. Thank you for bringing Madalena Ferran to the English-speaking worlds. I went to my library to get the book that you presented us this summer. Thank you very much, Denise, for your hard work.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. It was doloroso traduzir Madalena Ferrin, but she's one of the best poets. I don't want to say too loud because I owe José Luis the book, but I have a right here, José Luis. I just looked at it for you because I know you're a fan of Madalena as I am. But Antonio, thank you so much. Your English is perfect, so don't even ask any excuses of that because your English is amazing. So just a quick brief bio. So Antonio Monteiro is now a PhD candidate in international studies at ESCTE, the IU in Portugal. He holds a bachelor's degree and a master's. Bachelor's degree in European Studies and International Politics, and a master's degree in International Relations from the University of the Azores. His research is focused on the internationalization of the Azores Islands, particularly their impact on transatlantic transport, on communications, and knowledge. He works at the Santa Maria Oceanic Control Center, is the co-founder of and current chairman of LPAZ Association. He'll explain what that is to you, as well as vice president of the Club Azores do Atlântico, which is world famous. And I do mean world famous radio station because even in Terceira, we used to listen to Club Azores do Atlântico.
Even interested.
Even in Terceira, where we had the Rádio Clube de Angra, they were but even in Terceira, we listened to Clube Azores do Atlântico. Both of those private stations at that time, Clube Azores do Atlântico in Santa Maria and Rádio Clube de Angra in Terceira, were very important, for I think the entire archipelago, as they were private entities, and even though they had to follow a lot of the same rules as the Emissora Nacional or what we call the regional part of Emissora Nacional in Ponta Delgada, they kind of once in a while would go away, kind of got away with some things. I recall my father used to talk about that, how he liked to listen to things that came from Clube Azores do Atlântico because they would get away with putting some things forth that maybe the censorship had not noticed. So sometimes we kind of forget about that dual role of these two private organizations. And so he has co-edited several works on cultural heritage of aviation. And so his most recent individual work is titled As Ilhas nas Relações Internacionais, Santa Maria Açores no século XX. and he is the co-author of this book that we just brought out, which will be also part of the topic of our conversation today, which is based on last year's LPAZ forum, the Azores, the Atlantic, and the global challenges. And I see actually one of our attendees is Tomé Ribeiro, who is a staple
Hi, Tomé.
at this conference, and what a bright young man. But let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, António. What is LPAZ for the organization, the association? How did it begin, and why?
Well, thank you for that first question. Well, LPAZ started as an association, non-profit and ONG, non-governmental organization, because the people here in the island of Santa Maria, which is greatly influenced, its society, its economy is greatly influenced by the Santa Maria International Airport that worked here in the second half of the 20th century, following the Second World War, where the Americans built here the first American airbase in the Azores was in Santa Maria. At Chalenges, it was a British airbase, and then when the British withdrew from the Atlantic, the Americans were kind of invited to occupy the space in Chalenges, and the Santa Maria American airbase was transferred into Portuguese jurisdiction, and not only Portuguese but also civilian jurisdiction. So it transformed itself into an international airport. At that time, especially in the 1950s, 1960s, and even in the 1970s, most of the transatlantic flights needed to stop over at the Azores. So civilian flights all stopped in Santa Maria. The largest, especially because of the Cold War, was reserved to military traffic. So this made Santa Maria a cosmopolitan, and transformed the economy, of course, the society of the island, and left over a great patrimony, not only physical patrimony, but also a cultural patrimony that was in the beginning in 1912 well, since the end of the 20th century and in the beginning of the 21st century, we noticed that nothing was being done regarding this great heritage. And the fact is, since it's a civilian enterprise, it's harder to study it because the archives, if they exist, they are in bad shape, and because enterprises, they just keep their archives during that time that the accountability rules oblige them to have them arranged, and then they go to garbage. And and then there's also, of course, the interest of the governments regarding this issue. Like the title of my thesis that you mentioned there, it's The Islands in International Relations. I could have made the title like Santa Maria History in the 20th Century, but no, I kind of reversed it because we need to have that clearly perspective that the islands, maybe like everything else, but islands are used when states need them, and then when the states don't need them, they just left them to their own fates. So that's what happened with the airport of Santa Maria. It was incredibly important for transatlantic relations, for transatlantic societies. If you put it like this, the United States have two strong arms on the foreign policy, the military policy and economical and cultural policy. Hollywood and Marshall Plan and all those things. So the military arm of the American foreign policy passed through Lages, and civilian or cultural arm passed, the economical arm passed through Santa Maria. And there still is a lot to be done regarding the history and the role of the Santa Maria Airport on this great air bridge that was made in the second half of the 20th century. In 2012, finally, this area of the American air base, that was transformed into a Portuguese civilian air base, if I may, because it was ran by the Republic Portuguese mainland institutions. This great area was transferred to autonomous to the regional government. So only in 2012, the Azorians have a word to say about this sites, like a big air base that the Americans started to build and the Portuguese evolved. So the question is, why LPAZ association? We created this association to work on three levels. The first level, to kind of be present and try to help the several institutions that still run the aeronautical operational importance of the Azores and Santa Maria in the transatlantic aviation environment. Of course, nowadays, most of the flights don't need to stop in the Azores for refueling, but Santa Maria and other islands in the Azores are still very important for aviation. It's something that's nowadays it's quite invisible, almost invisible, but because it's natural for us. Maybe in some years, like seeing a rocket going to the sky will be natural for us. Aviation has been in our lives for 100 years, so it's kind of natural. So we don't see it as something awkward, but in fact, it's Santa Maria and the Azores still have a relevant role in aviation, in spite they don't stop here for refueling as much as they did before. And then that's the first level, a kind of operational level, to be more to make a link between the companies that work on aviation and the social economy and the society. And then the second level, it's that heritage, that the patrimony, how has a society, civilian society will run this issue. How are we as Azorians gonna run this heritage, or this fardo? How do you say fardo in English?
Just what? Sorry,
Fardo, a heavy thing that we have to handle.
Yeah. The
burden,
an inheritance that we got that can weigh on you. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of a burden. How how are you gonna solve this? And then the third part that we've been working more, it's the cultural heritage of all this. Looking for aviation, and we started through aviation, but in fact we are expanding through the role of Santa Maria and the Azores in the support for transport, communications, knowledge, and the domain of the Atlantic. Of course, aviation in the 20th century was the great tool for this realities. But we've been noticing that now space industries, space technologies is opening a new chapter on this. And of course, before aviation, maritime technologies were here for centuries, and that's why the Azores became discovered and had a relevant role in the Azores. So LPAZ is an ONG that appeared to try to recover what the this heritage and this patrimony that Santa Maria and the Azores have. Of course, it's for its nature, it's a transatlantic patrimony that we have been finding synergies with other shores of the Atlantic to work this issue, and it's been working very, very well. People are very interested in this, in having a perspective, a conscience about the role of the Azores on the transatlantic endeavor. So, and why LPAZ? LPAZ, the code LPAZ, it's because the ICAO, the International Aviation Organization that was created following the Second World War, that organizes the world into in its aeronautical perspective, divided the world in several regions, and inside several regions there are each country, and inside each country there are several aeronautical services. So that's why Santa Maria Airport has the ICAO code LPAZ, which L is for the southern part of the of Europe region, P for Portugal, and AZ because Santa Maria was the airport of the Azores. So it was Santa Maria until 1980 was the Azores gateway, aeronautical gateway. So civilian air traffic, civilian passengers would come from the other islands to Santa Maria to go to Lisbon, for instance, or to go elsewhere for international routes. And the other way around, of course. So until just another note on this, until 1961, for an Azorean or anyone else to fly from the Azores to Lisbon, we had to fly an international airliner because TAP did not fly to the Azores until 1961.
Wow.
So just an overview of the LPAZ. It's a small association which has been having a lot of support of other academic partners, not only in Lisbon and the Azores, University of the Azores, but we have been trying to kind of have a more academical and scientific view on our realities, and to try to work on this issue of Santa Maria and the Azores, because Santa Maria is 3% of the archipelago, and it's 3% of the power of the archipelago. And in a democratical environment, 2% it's nothing. So we have to make bridges to other parts of the Atlantic, to other institutions that have their own interests, so we can combine interests. And maybe that the fact that we are only 3% of the Azores, as well as the Azores as a whole, is only 3% of Portugal, and Portugal is only 3% of the European Union, for instance. So to be small, we have to have a great bridges. So this bridge with California and with Denise and PBY and Bruma Publications with the book, for us, is very, very important.
Thank you, António. How did the idea begin? So you've started the organization to bring awareness, to look at this heritage, to do some scientific work, around it as well, to bring together a scientific community from the different perspectives, not just aviation, but you have, of course, from a historical and a political science perspective, from a now literary perspective as well. How did you transition, or how did the idea come about to start a forum, to start an event that is held, for the last few years in Santa Maria, usually the first few days of September? How did that come about? What was the nexus of that?
Yeah, the fact is that we've been since 2012, 13, we did 2 or 3 international conferences, which they were very, very small, but we had great help from a Professor Alan Dobson, which was the one of the greatest historians on aviation, on transatlantic relations and aviation. He was very found king of Santa Maria, and he came here sometimes. And all gathering him with other Portuguese scholars, we had already been doing some conferences under the title under the topic of aviation and international relations. Try to look to aviation in another context that would not only be military aviation, because when we've been talking for 50 years about the geostrategical importance of the Azores, we tend to talk about only the military and state state perspective, like the only reality that exists is the state's the government reality, but there's a lot of other realities going on. So we had done these conferences, but then in 2014, I participated in Ponta Delgada in a French conference under the title kind of the archipelagos and the places of passage, l'archipel et les lieux de passage, about islands and archipelagos. And I went there to talk about Louis Castex, which was a French aviator that wrote some books about the Azores as a future aviation hub. And he wrote these books in the 1930s and 1940s. And then a friend of ours, which was one of the organizers of that conference, he got the idea, or he showed us the idea of doing a conference, an international conference in Santa Maria regarding the title Aviation Writers, Aviators. So the Saint-Exupéry and the other aviators that were writers or other writers that wrote about aviation. So that's why we made the first LPAZ forum, an international conference, academical conference in 2015 here in Santa Maria. And it was a great success because aviation has always been a matter of fascination. It's one of the great dreams of humankind to fly, and finally we have been flying since 1905. So and of course that changed a lot of our perspective on the reality, and that's why we right in 2015 decided to make this forum, LPAZ forum every 2 years. So in 2017 the topic, which was set by Professor Alan Dobson, was aviation, the impact on time and space. And with that LPAZ forum, we also had, it was a 2 days academic conference. And then we had 2 other days with a gathering of the aeronautical museums and archives of the North Atlantic. So there was the TWA Museum from Dallas. They are in Dallas. I don't know which state is Dallas. I'm sorry.
Texas.
Sorry. And also the Pan Foundation, Pan American Historical Foundation, the Gander Museum, which is in Canada, the Foynes Museum, which it's Irish. We had also our friends from France, and also the Portuguese Air Force, of course, and other smaller museums in all the North Atlantic, and also some archives like the military archives, the Air Force archives, and not only from the Portuguese but also from the United States. So it was very important for us to see what other people are doing in the Atlantic regarding this aviation history and this aviation heritage, and how can we work better and have more tools to give people and our communities more conscious about this aviation endeavor that we all use, but few of us study. Only after the end of the 20th century, we could look back, oh, the 20th century is the aviation century. We should study this more. Aviation has been studying only mostly under an economical perspective and not all of the rest. So I think this conference was very important on reflecting about aviation and what was its has been its impact on time and space, our notions of time and space. So it was very interesting. So then in 2019, we decided to make the conference in 2020, but then there was the pandemics. We recovered from the pandemics only in 2022 with a smaller conference because we were still under the pandemic's environment. And the title was similar to this one that we made in 2023 again. It was the Azores, the Atlantic, and the first in 22 we used the title the Azores, the Atlantic, and the Challenge of the West. But then we kind of calibrated this title to the Azores, the Atlantic, and the Global Challenges to the conference, the LPAZ forum that we organized in 2023, which this 23 edition had a call for papers and all the due process that we also always do because we were already free from the pandemics, and we knew that people wanted to restart this endeavor of the LPAZ forum that we decided in 2022 to make it every year, so early, every year. So that's what we've been doing since 2022, and following the 2023 edition, we published now this book, The Azores, the Atlantic, and the Global Challenges, Geopolitics and Diaspora. Let me say that following the 2015 edition and the 2017 edition, we also published the articles that were presented on that conference, and it was published in the French publishing house through a protocol that the APEF, the Portuguese French Studies Association, has with a French publishing house to publish them. So they are available online. It's the first one is Writers, Aviators, Aviation Writers, and the second one is Aviation: The Impact on Time and Space. I think they are both very interesting books, as well as this one, which, with the help of Bruma Publication, the effort of Dinis Borges and Dulce Maria Scott, we've peer reviewed and gathered along this last year and published this September. And I think it makes a good reflection on the Azores and the role of the Azores in the Atlantic and the importance of the Azores for the Atlantic. So I like to it's important for us to look at both sides. So we've been trying here at the LPAZ Forum to not make it an Azorean thing. So we're thinking about the Atlantic from the Azores, but and we are thinking about the Azores from the Atlantic. So we cannot close ourselves in the Azores, and that's important for us. And several things work on this way, doing this publication with Bruma, thinking on a larger audience, the new generations that speak or don't read as much Portuguese, that's for us very important to write in English to a broader, a wider community. That I think that helps us to have a better view of the Azores, and that's helped us to live in the islands.
Yeah, indeed, and it's and thanks to all the contributors, of course, all of the folks who presented and agreed to publish. Some of them were still works in progress, so they weren't ready to publish their works yet. but we have, I think, a good representation, and I think António, and then Monica, and of course Dulce did a lot of work on this, a lot. But thank both of you as well for including the diaspora in this. I think the diaspora, as you and I spoke in private there a couple of times, the diaspora can we can look at the diaspora differently, I think, today. And that's been kind of a thing that we've kind of had the last 4 days as well, this conference, which is looking at the diaspora a bit different than just the immigrants that left in the 19 whatever 1800s. Some folks left from Santa Maria as well in the 1800s, from like all the islands of the Azores to the Americas, and before that, other parts of the world as well, and especially to Brazil. And then in the 20th century, even the most recent wave of immigration past the 1964, 65 Family Reunification Act here in the United States, that actually Daniela spoke about at last year's conference, which influenced tremendously. Uh, the diaspora today can be a forward-thinking aspect of the Azores and the Atlantic, because we have people in so many different areas in the United States and Canada, and obviously in Brazil as well. But in this newer, let's put it this way, diaspora, we have second and third generations who are now professionals, and now who can now contribute to the Azores in a different, and have a dialogue that maybe their grandparents or great grandparents who came over in the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, many of them without knowing how to read or write could not. And it took, one generation of that, especially at that time. The 1960s was a bit different, but in the early 20th century, it took a generation. To the second generation, it was mostly the grandchildren of immigrants, and some children as well, that went to school and got their degrees and are now professional. And we've talked a lot about this. They still feel about the Azores and how can contribute. How can they contribute, for example, to the space program that's being put forth in Santa Maria? The How can they contribute to in science, in literature, in the social sciences as well, in a conversation between our two worlds. And so I thank you for including the diaspora. I think it's the first step of other things that we can bring forward.
Yeah.
Especially trying to get to Santa Maria, which I'd love to work on, and be able to convince. Well, it's not hard to convince people to go to the Azores, but to convince them, to take time from their schedule. I know a few young Portuguese Americans or Azorean descent, who are in different fields, from political science to the hard sciences, who study these areas of knowledge. And it would be very interesting for them, some of them, work in academia, to also share their papers and their views, in Santa Maria, from a different perspective that Dulce and I will have. We've been, or even Daniela, obviously as well, because we're kind of still live both worlds. It'd be interesting from the diaspora aspect for Santa Maria and for LPAZ and the forum to look at the diaspora from a third generation or a fourth generation.
I would say that was even emotional to listen yesterday on this conference to, I believe it's Sérgio Ferreira from Santa Catarina. He talked about, I never thought about this, but he talked about immigration as an experience of death. And it's kind of emotional because of course, I have immigration histories in my family. I was born in Canada, and then my parents returned when I was a little kid. And I have an older brother there. So immigration today doesn't need no longer, and it is no longer an experience of death, because we have aviation. It's very easy. It's much easier to and fast, rapid to be connected with each other. But we also have these technologies, and especially after the pandemics, it's been even easier to be an islander. And so we more things happen online. More education is available online. More literature is available online. More gatherings are made online. It's getting more and more natural for everybody, and that's for an islander and an islander in this very small island. That's very important. That's point one. Point two, the fact that this also helps for us to be on the same page when regarding the universal thought or knowledge. We are all seeking the same projects or the same endeavors, the same answers. We are all seeking the same answers, living in Corvo, in Santa Maria, in California. So we are getting on the positive side of a flat world. So we are kind of more equal. So being an Azorian in the Azores and being an Azorian in Cambridge, Ontario, where my brother is, we have more tools to have that experience, to be an Azorian anywhere we want. And I've been participating in another island studies project, which is the Virtual Island Summit. They were already doing this Virtual Island Summit before the pandemics. And one day we were discussing the teams for next year, and one of the teams that I presented was kind of the title was kind of displacement as a human right. So to you don't have to be on a big city to have the rights that to have your human rights acknowledged. You have to have the right to decide where to live, and that doesn't have to block you from being who you are. If you are an Azorian, you must be able to be an Azorian wherever you are. You don't have to be in the Azores to be an Azorian. And I think that's something that we should work on, and I think you've been working, Dinesh, and we're a lot of people that has been working in Diaspora, and people that are like I said, it was emotional to see from people from Santa Catarina working from their heritage for so long. That's who we are, and that's very important for everybody to cultivate their difference in the whole world. We need to be more different from each other.
That's true. And I'm going to turn to José Luis, 'cause I know he probably has a couple of questions and comments. He loves Santa Maria, so that we have that in common, as I do as well. But just your brief thoughts, António, yesterday with Andrea Muniz de Sousa, which is the president of the AEA, Azorian Immigrants Association, that's headquartered in Ribeira Grande in São Miguel. We were talking about the importance of the diaspora, and of us in the diaspora learning about the new Azores, the Azores that are different than the Azores when I came over and José Luis came over, but also different, much different from the Azores that folks that are of third and fourth generation when their grandparents or great grandparents came over in the early 20th century. And so, and we were talking about that, and we came to kind of the conclusion it's actually going to be one of our action items of this conference is, and I would like to get your thoughts on that, how we need to do a little bit more with civil society on both sides. In other words, o nosso movimento associativo, the organizations here, whether they be, cultural organizations or social organizations, along with the academic and the school settings as well, and universities, how we need to do that a bit more than just leaving it up to the governments. Nothing against governments. Governments are, important, but they're limited on funds. They have objectives very clear to their placement in power. That's just the way all governments work in a democracy and not democratic. And we were talking about her with her about the AEA, and I think I thought automatically when we were talking to her about it, I thought about LPAZ and all of the and other organizations that exist in other islands that we could kind of all work together a bit more to get a little bit more of the civil society on both sides of the Atlantic and on both sides of the Atlantic and the Pacific when it comes to North America, both United States and Canada, thinking of the East Coast and the West Coast of both countries, where we have a strong diaspora presence, and get a little bit more of this working together without having to always have the presence
Mhm.
of the government there. In other words,
Mhm.
without having to say, well, we can't do this because we didn't get a $1,500 subsidy from the government or
Yeah.
$2,000 government. So that we can use some of the resources that the diaspora has as well to facilitate, these ongoing events between the Azores and the diaspora. What are your thoughts on it before I turn to the
Well, my thoughts, or the LPAZ experience, if it's useful on this, the fact is that as I told in the beginning, this all started because a group of people here, people from Santa Maria, uh, saw that much more had to be done regarding this patrimony, this heritage. Um, but of course, the democratical powers don't see that's one problem of the best the the worst political system. Uh, if you don't look to the others, I'm not translating well the Churchill quote. Winston Churchill quote, so that democracy is the worst system if we don't consider the other ones. So democracy has this problem. So how come Santa Maria, a 3% community of the whole democracy in the Azores, the regional autonomy in the Azores, could go forward with their own aspirations? What we've been doing is firstly do the things that we think that have to be done, regardless of the resources that the governments or any other institution gives us. That's hard, but we have to gather our own resources and do it ourselves. Voluntary work, of course. And most of the work of the LPAZ, of course, we don't do only this LPAZ forum. We have a virtual tour on the airport and on the old airbase, which you can, if you put on Google, search the LPAZ tour Santa Maria, you'll get to a virtual museum that was made by us, the members of the LPAZ boards, Ricardo Batista and Álvaro and me. We wrote the text and made the infrastructure for free. And so other projects we've been doing anyway. So when the power, and that's not only for our political economy, political system or context here in the Azores, but that works for any political environment, even the big democracy of the US. When the power sees that you're gonna do it anyway, well, they want to be with you. And if they see that if they don't sponsor you, you won't do the thing, so they don't sponsor you. So if you prove that you can do it anyway, they will want to be with you. I think that's the first point. The second point, it's very important for us to have bridges elsewhere. And not only one bridge, not only two bridges, we have to have several bridges on not only institutional, but also in the context. We have academical bridges, we have bridges with the companies that work on aviation, other kinds of relationships that people that are interested in the same matter as we are here in the Azores, but also elsewhere. So if I may, a comparison with the diaspora context with the aviation context, if we may, or aviation heritage context, to speak about diaspora, we need to speak also about other diasporas, compare our diaspora with other diasporas. That's what we've been doing with our aviation heritage. Compare our heritage, aviation heritage in the Azores, for instance, with the Irish history, because they have similar history, like Iceland history on aviation. Iceland also started with American aviation, with American military base, and then aviation there evolved. And well, for instance, Iceland has a stronger aviation cluster than the Azores. Ireland, of course, has a stronger aviation cluster than the Azores. They have Ryanair and other companies. We only have SATA. Cape Verde has a lower aviation cluster than the Azores. So let's compare. What have we been doing better than Cape Verde? What have we been doing worse than Iceland? So it's very important for us to be comparing with other environments, other contexts that have the same history as us, but on their own path. So I think the Azorean diaspora needs to, if I may, Azorean diaspora needs to talk more with other diasporas or that have the same path. That would we could share resources and make other bridges that would make us stronger on our path, and have access on other resources, and not allowing other people to even think that, oh, that's an Azorian thing, or that's only people that are related to the Azores. No, diaspora, it's another whole world. It's in a whole context and living human experience. Living on the diaspora context it's one of the fundamental and most recurrent human experiences. Humankind has always evolved on diasporas and diasporas all over again. So we've been always embarked in voyages.
That's a very good point, and I think we do need to do more diaspora sharing with other groups and learning from other groups. As you said, we have some things, just like you compared the Azores to Cabo Verde, the aviation front, and Ireland and Iceland, the same thing. We have other diasporas that are not as strong as ours, but that we can also see what we've done that they haven't. But we have others, not just the Hispanic, that's a totally different world, but even the Greek, the Armenian, that have a lot of similarities in the California with us. The Greeks, the Armenians, the Polish have a lot of context. Luis, I know that you have comments or questions, so please do.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, António Monteiro, albeit electronically. I really enjoyed your presentation. Denise said before that I really like Santa Maria, and that's true. I think Santa Maria is a forgotten island. If you look at it quickly, it has a great airport, closest to the mainland of Portugal, closest to the biggest island with population, San Miguel. It has a history that's fascinating. That's the first island to be discovered and settled. The first place for Christopher Columbus to stop on his trip back. A great beach, great weather, actually the driest in the Azores, and so the last chances of having earthquakes. So it's a great potential island for tourism. It could be like the Port Sant of the Azores, but somehow it gets forgotten. But what I would like to add to your presentation, though, actually comment is what's been talked about, the importance of the Santa Maria Airport, particularly in immigration. In January 1969, when I came to America, I left San Miguel in a little propeller plane from the Aerovacas Airport Santana to Santa Maria. I think it was a 20-minute flight. And from there, we took, I think it was TWA. Those days was TWA or Pan America. and flew all the way to Boston. So I at least from San Miguel, I don't know about the other islands if they went through Lajes, but from San Miguel, just about all the immigration in the 60s went through the airport in Santa Maria. So right there has a tremendous importance. And I just like to remind you of the Almeida Maya novel, America, which deals with that. So that's basically my comment. One quick personal question. António Monteiro, are you related to Manuel Monteiro de Velha Ruda?
Well, the Monteiro is the same, but it's a family that if you do the family tree, it's the same Monteiro in the 19th century. But since the 19th century, a lot of generations have passed. So yeah, Padre Jacinto Monteiro, which was a genealogist, he used to call us cousins, but kind of fifth cousins. So it's a long way. We are islands and we are all interconnected, of course.
Yes,
of course,
we have the same situation with the Ruda side. I'm related to him, to the Ruda side from Ponta Delgada. What about the house museum, the Casa Museum, the Manuel Monteiro Velha Ruda in na Vila de Porto? Já está, it's already open to the public. Last time I was there a few years ago, they were starting to do that. And him being the great historian of Santa Maria, are they paying homage to him?
No, nothing. Manuel Monteiro Velha Ruda, even people from Santa Maria don't know the relevance of his study regarding the history of the Azores and how he was important on the 500th anniversary of the discovery of the Azores in 1932, and his works on the history of the discovery of the Azores, and his work on gathering the Arquivo dos Açores, the archive of the Azores, which is the source of all of the historians and the historians that work at the Azores. No, Manuel Monteiro Velha Ruda has not been paid tribute here in the island. He has a busto, how do you call a statue, and has a name of a street, but most of the people don't know who he really was as an historian. Maybe people know him more as a physician, medic, and great grandfather of Madalena Ferran. He was a physician at Vila Franca do Campo in São Miguel, and that's why his granddaughter was born there. So maybe that's the fact that he worked most of his life in São Miguel because he was a physician influences here. The fact is that even Madalena Ferran and all his brothers also needs to more work on them. Madalena Ferran is being rediscovered now, or finally discovered now, but her brothers were also great poets. But no, we don't have that museum here. I would say that the museum from Santa Maria, what is active, is only an ethnographic museum in the freguesia of Santo Espírito. An old the captain's house, the Casa do Capitão in the old Vila do Porto part, which is the oldest village in the Azores. It still has strong marks of a medieval village. The Casa do Capitão was reconstructed to be the Island Museum, and I think it's the construction ended in 2018, I think. Well, before the pandemics, and the fact is that we are still waiting for a permanent exhibition at the Museum of the Island. So I don't know what's happening, but what you said, the first island to be discovered, the first island to have a settlement experience overseas from Portugal until Madeira and Porto Santo, we only were at North African coast. That first experiences that the Portuguese Ordem de Cristo made here in the Azores The fact that the first transatlantic stop was made by Columbus here in the island. So the first place that knew about the New World was Santa Maria. The pirates' histories that were strong here in the Azores, all of its a strong history that Santa Maria has somehow and some way, this word that does not exist, for some reason, has been I don't know how to I don't think there's a reason, a logical reason for this. Only this one, if I'm from political sciences, only this perspective that democratically the democratic powers don't see a good feedback on the 1 million or 2 millions that they will need to expand here.
Yes.
That's one of the strongest reasons I see here. That's why we need to maybe do other partnerships to go find resources elsewhere, and don't relay as much as we've been relaying in Portugal in our democracy from the power institutions, the governmental institutions.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about in this conference has been now how Azorians are turned towards Europe and maybe forget their roots, and definitely forget us. Definitely forget our immigration. The powers that be, we gradually more forgotten, except for the entities that are involved there. They're excellent at that. So, for anybody interested in Santa Maria, it's the 15th volume of the Arquivo dos Açores that is all about Santa Maria, and Manuel Monteiro organized and put it all together. Very nice talking to you.
Very nice talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, António. We're coming up on the hour. We have our next presenter here in a few minutes, but I wanted to make sure, first of all, thank you. Make sure everyone knows about the book. If you are in the Azores, you can order it through Letras Lavadas. And the good thing about it is it can be ordered even online. So if you're in another island, it can be delivered to you anywhere in the Azores, anywhere in all of Portugal, for that matter. Here in California or here in North America, United States and Canada, you can order it through PBBI. You have the contacts. I just wanted to really quick mention some of the themes of the book. And so I won't mention the people, but the Azores in the Atlantic, geopolitical trends, which is a perspective analysis. You have a chapter on the Atlantic security, EU and NATO relations. A chapter on security in the Portuguese Atlantic, a chapter on defending an Atlantic maritime strategy for Portugal, a chapter on the European Union and the outermost regions, their strategies, impacts, and the Azorean potential within that context, covert operations in the Azores archipelago during World War II. We have a chapter on the diaspora, Portuguese Americans navigating between assimilation and diaspora, on the Portuguese Americans, the dream they were denied, the Azorean bridges in the Atlantic and the Pacific. We have the representations of the exiled king in the Azores from Mozambique. We have the Azores or Western Islands on the European Grand Tour, and so lots of different things. There's a history of of LPAZ. It's that way, LPAZ forums, and in the beginning we have a preface by Professor Carlos Amaral from the University of the Azores, and a wonderful introduction that was done by the organizers. But thank António and Ana, Monica, and also Dulce for it's quite a extensive introduction. It's chapter 1, and it's called the Azores, the Atlantic, and the Diaspora. And so it kind of pulls all that. So you can order it from us here at PBBI at Fresno State. For those of you in North America, for those of you in the Azores, the book is all in English, and it will be used. This semester was a bit too late when we got it because we had already started. There's actually one text that's going to be used, but it will be used in our Portuguese, in our course, not language. We teach a course once every year in the fall semester. So the next one will be in the fall semester. It's being taught right now, and it'll be the fall semester of 2024. And so we're going to take a couple of these texts and be used for our Azores history, literature and culture class, because I think that it's interesting for the students to understand. I always try to, when we talk about literature, try to understand Azores from a global perspective. These people aren't just talking about a little village, next to the sea where you go fishing and blah blah blah. From the idea that they have, especially those who are of Azorean background, the idea that they have of an Azores passed on, and rightly so, by their grandparents or great grandparents of the early 20th century. Those who are older and those who are younger, their grandparents that immigrated here in the early 1960s. And so it will be used, but I wanted to make sure everyone that's tuning in, and if you have any issues, please send me an email and we'll get you a copy one way or another. Thank you, António. I appreciate it
Thank you,
very much.
Dinesh. Thank you all for
Thank
this.
you for all your great work, and continue as always. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we're working on the next LPAZ forum. Will be in the first days of September 25.
The first few days of September 25, and although it's a year away or 11 months, it comes real quick, does it?
Yeah. We need to start working now.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you
so much for
Thank
joining.
you all.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And that was António Monteiro, who is, as you heard, is from the island of Santa Maria, one of the organizers of the conference. And besides, of course, the conference, he is also on the LPAZ organization, and really does a lot of great work in Santa Maria Island, and a lot of great work also in the for this conference as well. We have our next presenter online, and I'm going to bring him in real quick. He is, of course, the regional director of the Azorean communities. He agreed to give us a presentation. We're delighted. He is, I think, traveling as well in between one place or another. He couldn't be here for our opening event, but he is here now and will be with us, I should say, in just a couple of minutes for a talk that he's going to give us as well. So those of you on social media, please just follow us. Those of you on Zoom, continue with us as well. I'm going to take just again a 10-second break to start another recording with another presenter, but don't go away, because we are continuing the Luso-American Education Foundation Conference, the 48th and the 5th put forth in the last 5 years by PBBI-Fresno State, actually the 5th by PBBI, because although we did one here in 2018, at that time PBBI wasn't actually in existence. That's where the concept of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute was born in 2018 at a conference at Fresno State and Tulare Joint Union High School District.